Welcome back to Outside Views, and you know that I'm absolutely frank about my view here. And this has been a disaster, plain and simple, and I refuse to pretend otherwise. I'm talking about Brexit, of course, and the undeniable negative impact it has cemented on the UK economy for what is now the foreseeable future. For too long, the people who actually run the economy, the public officials, the bankers, the ones dealing with the numbers every single day, were careful to hedge their bets. They had to, didn't they? It was a political decision, a vote by the people, and they felt their public duty was to simply implement it and not to critique it, although it was a non-binding referendum. But that shield of neutrality, that careful tiptoeing around the harsh reality, has finally shattered. The UK's most senior banker, the Governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, has finally and unequivocally confirmed what the rest of us already knew. The impact on economic growth is definitively negative and will be for years to come. And when asked directly about the impact on growth, he said as a public official he simply had to answer. And his answer? For the foreseeable future, it is negative. That's the head of the Bank of England stating his cold, hard assessment. It's not some biased analyst or an overtly political think tank. It is the person whose job it is to safeguard the nation's financial stability. And this isn't a blip. It's a structural headwind, a self-imposed obstacle. And he points directly to the decline in the UK's potential growth rate. Think about that. The potential growth rate, what the economy is capable of sustaining, has dropped over the last 15 years from a promising 2.5% to a sluggish 1.5%. That's a massive 1 full percentage point loss in the fundamental capacity of the economy to grow. And he links that decline not just to lower productivity and an aging population, which are real problems everywhere, but crucially to trade restrictions and post-Brexit economic policies. And these are the consequences of making an economy less open. Less open means less nimble, less competitive, and ultimately less prosperous. It's simply common sense, and it aligns with the classic Smithian growth model he referenced. Restricting trade restricts long-term growth. The people who promised global Britain and a frictionless exit have delivered an economy shackled by new barriers and red tape, creating friction where there was once seamless trade. And of course, there's always an optimistic footnote, a glimmer of long-term hope that they are obliged to mention. Mr. Bailey suggested that eventually, over the much longer term, the economy will adjust and find a new balance, a partial rebalancing because trade does adjust. But let's be clear. Longer term is the economist's word for we'll all be retired or gone before this works itself out. And in the meantime, we are living in the foreseeable future, and that future is one of lower growth, lower productivity, and more complicated trade. And the hard evidence is right in front of us, and it's deeply worrying. The latest official figures from the Office for National Statistics show gross domestic product, that's the total value of goods and services produced, rising by a miserable 0.1% in August, and only after a surprise contraction of 0.1% in July. Growth is muted, subdued, and fragile. In the 3 months to August, GDP growth was a paltry 0.3%. And this kind of anemic performance is not the sign of an economy surging with new profound freedom, it's the sign of an economy stuck in the mud. And as if slow growth wasn't enough, the UK is now staring down the barrel of an inflation surge that is forecast to be the worst among its G7 peers in both 2025 and 2026. The International Monetary Fund, another authoritative and impartial source, predicts that UK inflation is set to surge to the highest in the G7 for both of those years. Highest inflation And low growth is a toxic combination that hits every single person in the pocket. It's a double whammy for living standards. And this is the true cost of making one economy less open, of adding administrative and regulatory hurdles to trade that used to flow freely. And it makes everything more expensive. It's what happens when you substitute efficient established relationships for a vague aspirational global Britain that is still years, perhaps decades away from at least a bit materializing, if it ever does. And it's no wonder Chancellor Rachel Reeves is under immense pressure ahead of the upcoming budget. She has to face this reality, a difficult economic backdrop made all the more challenging by this ongoing self-inflicted wound. And the political debate is still raging, of course. And we still see figures like Nigel Farage and Richard Tice scrutinizing the Bank of England, but perhaps they should be scrutinizing the foundational choice that has created this difficult economic environment in the first place. The Bank of England's primary focus, the only way forward now, is to somehow address this decline in productivity growth. Mr. Bailey said they are putting their chips on investment in innovation and new technologies, particularly artificial intelligence. AI, he argues, looks like the next general purpose technology, the best hope they have to foster a breakthrough in productivity long term. It's a truly desperate situation when the head of the central bank must look to an unproven, potentially financially unstable technology like AI to dig the country out of an economic hole created by its own recent policy choices. And he himself had to warn that while AI is a long-term hope, it may, in the current circumstances, be a risk to financial stability through stretched valuations in the markets. So, the best hope is also a short-term risk, but they have to back it because the alternatives are so bleak. And it's a painful admission that there are no easy, immediate fixes to the structural damage that has been done. The UK is now desperately gambling on a tech breakthrough to reverse a decline in potential growth that was substantially caused by its new trade relationship, or lack thereof, with its nearest and biggest market. And that's a tragic irony. My British friends were promised sovereignty and prosperity, but they got bureaucratic barriers and a lower growth ceiling. The economic facts are speaking volumes now and louder than any political slogan. Lower potential growth, persistent inflation, and a fragile current output. For the foreseeable future, this is the bitter harvest of a terrible mistake, and the time for pretending this was all a temporary speed bump is over. The governor's words make that abundantly clear. This is a long-term structural weakness, and until the UK finds a way to genuinely reopen its economy and rebuild its trade links, this negative impact will remain a painful reality for everyone living there. The argument is now settled in the data, in the forecasts, and in the official pronouncements of the people who deal with nothing but the truth of the economy. Negative for the foreseeable future. It's a hard truth, and I believe we all have to accept it and deal with it. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time on Outside Views. And if you want to see another video right now, the next one is right here in the end screen.